What's up, gamers? DreamcastGuy here, talking today about Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, because over the course of the last week, we have gotten just an insane amount of information, including tons of gameplay, a new trailer, multiple hours of interviews talking about the fact that the game is going to be 150 gigs. They're talking about minigames, new bosses, new characters, new side quests, new card games. I want to explore all of this and take a look at it because honestly, I'll admit it, I'm kind of losing my mind. This is so incredibly cool. My favorite game ever of all the thousands of things I've played is the original Final Fantasy VII. I mean, I've even got weird stuff like the rare limited edition Final Fantasy VII shirt. I've read the rather terrible Final Fantasy VII books. I watched Advent Children like 15 times in Japanese before it even got translated. And of course, beat the original game about 80 times. I have been loving the Final Fantasy VII Remake, but I've also been kind of curious as to how much they plan on changing things for this remake trilogy. But let's take a look at the details. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to give it a like and subscribe if you haven't already. This is going to be a long one, I'm sure of it. So let's begin. So first off, I want to talk about some of the stuff that just came out here yesterday, which is the fact that the game is a massive 150 gigs. People are talking about the fact that this game is going to be a bare minimum 100 hours. Apparently, if you completely rush to the end, it's still going to be about 45 hours long. They're working hard on Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, and Intergrade helped the team familiarize themselves with the PS5 for faster development. The story runs until the end of the Forgotten Capital. Oh my gosh. Well, obviously, one of the most famous moments in all of Final Fantasy VII is the Forgotten Capital, the city of the ancients. The fact that things are going to end there, I mean, the first game just being Midgar was such an interesting choice because they managed to put so much extra lore into it. More characters, side quests, chocobos, extra additional details to really flesh the world out and explain why Shinra is the way it is. I think the idea of ending things at the Forgotten Capital is a very bold choice, but I think they had to do that. I am going to straight up say the first game is called Final Fantasy VII Remake, second game is called Rebirth. I do think the third game of this trilogy is possibly going to be called Revenge. But let's keep going here. Players with a Final Fantasy VII Remake save file will get an unknown summon materia at the start of Rebirth. A major question, I made a video about this about, 3 years ago, and I had a bunch of people straight up disagreeing with me, but I made a video called I Am Done with Final Fantasy VII Remake, where I had played 120 hours, I got the Platinum Trophy, I did everything, beat the game on hard, loved it a bunch, but I basically said that there is no way they're going to let us carry our save files over, and that was definitely confirmed. Now we know for a fact that you get to carry your save file over, but you're not going to have like your levels and your gears and your equipment and stuff. They are going to be giving us an unknown summon. That's a cool bonus. I mean, I kind of expected this anyways. I mean, obviously I predicted this years ago, but it's interesting that they're deciding to restart us. It makes sense because they don't want us to be like level 80 or a bajillion by the third game. I think we're going to level 20 to 60 in this new game or something. It's difficult. I don't think we're going to do level 1 to 50 in all three games. That just seems weird. Maybe we will, but the idea of having 1 to 50 three separate times seems like an odd choice, but I guess we'll find out. Expanded minigames. For example, Cloud can collect soldiers and decide how to arrange them in Rufus Shinra's inauguration parade for different outcomes. All right. So we're going to be talking a lot more about minigames in a bit. There is actually a huge, massive thing that we're about to look at here on the Square Enix website literally 10 minutes ago. The inspiration for this video is that they just released a jaw-droppingly huge article that I want to take a look at in depth. But going back to this here, Vincent Valentine will join your party but isn't playable. Implied that will happen in part 3. So much like how Red 13 is in Final Fantasy VII Remake, but as like a guest character, he just shows up and is there for a bit. Here's a good picture of Red 13 riding a chocobo. They're going to do that with Vincent Valentine, where you're going to see Vincent. They showed him even in the trailers and stuff, but we're not going to be using his special crazy transformative magic, at least not in this first game. All of that sounds fantastic. Now, from a gameplay perspective, my buddy here, Schrodinger's Baby Seal, got a chance to play it. He did a super long, super in-depth video about how amazing the game is, but he really focused on just how insane the gameplay is. Apparently, this really does feel like the next Final Fantasy. It does actually have good mechanics of warping around when you're playing as Sephiroth, or riding chocobos and upgrading them, or even just kind of getting a chance to explore big open zones, which we kind of had a tiny taste of in FF7 Remake because certain sections of Midgar were pretty big, but it seems like now, since we're going to have the entire world, things are about to get drastically more massive. But I want to actually take a look at this article now, because here is just absolutely crazy. Let's talk about new Materia, the tiny Bronco, which is the freaking plane. We're actually going to get a chance to use the plane in this game. Brand new minigames called Queen's Blood, characters from the compilation. Oh my gosh, this is so cool. Interview talking to the director, Naoki Hamaguchi. Oh my gosh. Okay, so I want to go through this bit by bit because honestly, I am still just kind of freaking out. It's so cool that we're going to have Final Fantasy VII. The fact that Rebirth is coming next year in February, I mean, what a great beginning of 2024. But more than that, I think I'm just still kind of fanboying because it's crazy to think that this is just so close, that we're actually going to have Rebirth here in, I mean, gosh, 2 months, 3 months? Yeah, it is coming up super, super fast, just a couple of months from now. But here we go. Final Fantasy VII Rebirth is shaping up to be a remarkable RPG. It's a beautiful, expansive adventure that's stuffed with things to do, an exciting story, and tons of optional content, and much more. But it's also got some memorable characters. Okay, so here's the interview itself. How much of the story of the original Final Fantasy VII is included in this game? I'll say that the locations covered in this game go up to the Forgotten Capital. Okay, but you don't need to have played Final Fantasy VII Remake for this one though, right? No, all 3 of the remake projects have been designed as standalone games in their own right, so any can be enjoyed fully, even if you haven't experienced the previous games. Okay, I'm going to call a little tiny bit of BS. I think that each of these games kind of assume you've played the original Final Fantasy VII. Maybe this is just my personal tastes because I have beaten FF7 like a bajillion times and I love the game a lot, but I think there is some assumed plot points where you're going to understand the context initially. Trying to play just Final Fantasy VII Rebirth seems like a very strange move that obviously 99% of people are not going to do that. And if you do that, you're definitely going to be lacking some of the experience. I do think it's worthwhile to play Final Fantasy VII Remake before Rebirth, but it's not essential if you want to know what happened in the previous game. There is a story so far digest movie in the game that'll get you up to speed. Man, I don't know, man. Final Fantasy VII Remake is like 30 hours, 35 hours, pretty much minimum. So making the story so far thing, I don't know if that'll really kind of cover it, but you know, that's the director of the game. He's trying to sell copies. I understand why he's saying that. Final Fantasy VII Remake had one of my favorite combat systems of any RPG. How have you built on it for this new game? The combat is still based on the system of Final Fantasy VII Remake, but for Rebirth, we've added in new elements that focus on teaming up with your allies. By observing the flow of battle and switching the party leader at the right time, you can do new synergy skills and abilities to gain an advantage over your enemies. Now, in a lot of the gameplay they showed, There are team attacks. I'm going to show you this clip because it's very funny, because honestly, it just kind of cracks me up. But in the middle of fights, characters will communicate with each other. Obviously, here it's two people that kind of seem like they maybe want to kiss and talk about their feelings, but like right here being like, oh, you're such a puppy. Like, why would Sephiroth say that? Especially this. Got to keep in mind, this entire section of the game is a flashback. It's just a story being told by Cloud. It's kind of weird that a story involves like staring into Sephiroth's eyes and panting like a puppy. But okay, anyways, I think the idea of team-based skills, double attacks, combos, that sounds so freaking cool. It really feels like this game is going to be so incredibly deep, and I think sometimes I enjoy when there's an RPG with crazy advanced mechanics and you end up having to Google stuff where you're like, okay, I don't fully grasp this. Let me get somebody that's more experienced than I am to try and break this down. I do think that Rebirth is going to be one of those games where people are making videos about best builds, best combos, best party members, and I love that. How has Materia's system evolved from the previous game? Is there any new materia to look forward to? There are many more types of materia than Final Fantasy VII Remake, and these allow for exciting new combinations in battle. For example, there are materia that automate some of your actions like AI, as well as exciting new types. So anybody who's played Final Fantasy XII, there was a system called Gambits where you could kind of program with very basic coding your party members. You know, stuff like if I'm at 30% health, automatically give me a potion. If an enemy has full health, target of target. Whatever I'm looking at, I want you to hit it with me. It sounds like we're going to be able to do Gambits in Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, at least to some degree, which to me sounds incredible, very different, but in my opinion, a big improvement. Oh my god, look, it's Chocobo racing from freaking Golden Saucer. Oh my god, I love it. There's a big attraction. There's like a big theme park in Final Fantasy VII, which has a million mini games and things to do, but oh my god, this is so cool. The most recent trailer revealed that there are lots of types of chocobos in the game. Why was this important to show? We wanted to pay homage to the original Final Fantasy VII, which had a lot of different types of chocobo in that game, such as the river chocobos and the mountain chocobos. That's a blue chocobo and a green chocobo. One of the big draws of Final Fantasy VII Rebirth is that you can explore the vast world map. So we reimagined that to be the different chocobos to become important features of that exploration. You can use them to fly, climb mountains, or speed across watery surfaces. You can also enjoy chocobos have collected in another way, entering them in Gold Saucer chocobo races. Yes, that sounds so good. I mean, that sounds so great. I like the idea of more of integrating it, because you did do this to a small degree in the original Final Fantasy VII. I mean, you did obviously breed chocobos. You got chocobos. They gave you some of the best summons in the game, like Knights of the Round. But making them more of a key feature to just general exploration sounds incredibly freaking cool. The world looks massive. How difficult was it to interpret the world map of the original Final Fantasy VII for this new game? This was one of the hardest challenges we faced when developing Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. There are a lot of games that let you explore in a limited area or of a specific location, but we haven't seen that many games that let you travel and explore a whole world. If that world is too massive, then it makes it harder for the game to work, but if it's too small, you don't get that feeling of the world being massive in the first place. We put a lot of work and thought into getting that balance right to fulfill both requirements. Man, I cannot wait to actually see that exploration. I mean, this does sound like one of those games where just literally going around, finding hidden locations, going into every nook and cranny is going to be glorious. Oh my gosh, it's the buggy! Oh my god, that's so cool. It's not just chocobos, of course, there's vehicles too. The buggy in particular had an awesome redesign from the original game. How do you capture that look of the original vehicle while making it fresh and new? We did a lot of research. In order to decide like the basic structure, types of tires, and so on, we looked into kinds of motorized modern vehicles, and poor quality roads, including military vehicles. Next, we look at external appearance. Design elements such as the jet engines on the rear for acceleration and the propeller screws traveling across water surfaces. It is a fantastical buggy design in the original FF7. However, we paid special attention to designing these fictional elements in a way that made them look real and functional. This looks so good. It's because the buggy is able to go across shallow water and, of course, a rough terrain. This is so cool. I'm kind of losing my mind. Oh my god. The most recent trailer also showed Cloud zipping across on a two-wheeled wheelie. Can you tell us a bit about that fun little machine? We wanted to have the player experience the feeling of liberation and freedom in Casa del Sol's resort area. It's like a little tropical paradise beach vacation spot. So we've given Cloud and the gang a fun, quirky little vehicle to shoot around rather than just walking. So there is a special promotional campaign being run in the game where you can earn souvenirs from traveling to certain distances on them, so I urge players to take them all over the place. Look at this. You are on segways. This is hysterical. Of course, the tiny Bronco will also appear. Due to the events of the story at the time, it can't actually fly. It sure flies a very short distance, but you can still use it even after its wings have been damaged to cross the ocean. Yeah, the tiny Bronco is a plane, but you just use it to basically get around chunks of the ocean. It has to stay close to shore, but I'm still freaking out about this. This is so, oh my gosh, look at this. Oh my gosh, I'm so happy about this. Okay, I'm sorry. Oh my god. How does the new content affect the structure of the game? Unlike the previous titles, we've had new content made available to the player following developments of the story. Final Fantasy VII Rebirth has been designed to allow the player to freely select what order to play much of its content in. Accordingly, it's also been structured so that none of the side content becomes cut off and you never lose the opportunity to go back and play it regardless of how far you've progressed in the story. That means you can take a detour and explore the expansive, vibrant world wherever the mood takes you. Now that sounds interesting, but I'm curious how it's actually going to work. I've played a lot of games that try and be like, you can go anywhere and do anything. And sometimes I feel like those kind of lose focus, where if you're not constantly given at least one main mission, it can sometimes go a little bit off the rails. So I'm curious about this, but that's the thing. I kind of want to see that in action. Among the new content is minigames. Many people remember the original Final Fantasy VII for having lots of minigames. For that reason, we felt it was important to let players come across lots of minigames while exploring Rebirth. There are actually even more than the original game. What's your personal favorite minigame? Of all the different minigames, the card game Queen's Blood could be said to be one of the headliners. It's an in-world card game that's very popular to the world of FF7 Rebirth, and a minigame that can be played many times from the start of your adventure till the end. Winning matches doesn't just enhance your desk, it also has a unique Queen's Blood storyline. So in certain Final Fantasy games, there's been different card games like Triple Triad and stuff. It's kind of crazy that we're not only getting a new card game, but additionally a card game plotline. Man, what else new elements can... Man, this is just so... This is so crazy to me. Let me read this and we're going to wrap this video up because it's already about to be 20 minutes long. But what new elements can we expect from Final Fantasy VII Rebirth that are taken from the compilation of FF7? I cannot reveal the details yet, but yes, there are many characters and details added to Rebirth that weren't featured in the original FF7, but were seen in the compilation. Since there's so many different versions of FF7, from the prequel of Crisis Core to the sequel, which is obviously Advent Children, and the books, there's all these side characters that weren't quite properly, fully part of the story, but now they are. This is just... It's crazy. FF7 just sounds like a bigger, better project. My hype for Rebirth is 11 out of 10. I feel like I've never been so excited for a game in my life. But what do you guys think about it? Tell me your thoughts in the comments down below. And if you could, please give this video a like, subscribe if you haven't already, and please keep dreaming. I'm like still legit. This is the coolest thing ever. This is the coolest thing ever. Thanks so much for watching that video. If you want to see something else, you can always click this link to see what I put up last, or, subscribe and see what's coming up next. Also, I promise that whatever I do, it'll try not to suck.